Welcome to Formula One Moments in Time with Lucien Byfield. This time we look at the history of the Monaco Grand Prix of the past. One of the most spectacular venues, yet most unsuited for Formula One. Over the years we have seen pile-ups, drivers crashing into the ocean, rainstorms so severe that they catch dominating drivers out, and even famously and historically cutting short a certain notable race in 1984 for many reasons. Monaco strangely suited some drivers, and others never found success there. Take Nigel Mansell for instance. Despite leading and having pole positions, something always went wrong, from his own mistakes to car issues, punctures, etc. So Mansell. And yet, Senna and Prost dominated this circuit for a full 10 years, where Senna won 6 times and Prost 4. Nelson Piquet never came to terms with the track. Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg have dominated there. Mark Webber was a specialist, and even Daniel Ricciardo has shone on more than one occasion. Of the current crop, Vettel, Hamilton, Raikkonen and Ricciardo have all won there, and at times have been sensational. One name that cannot be omitted from the list of winners is Hill, Damon's dad. Now Damon was great at Monaco too, but bad luck would make sure he didn't add his name to the history books. Yet his father Graham was nicknamed Mr. Monaco for his 5 wins, a record that stood unsurpassed until Ayrton Senna won it for the 6th time in 1993. As for the track, it is a tight, twisty circuit with barely any runoff areas. It's bumpy, it undulates, and there are barriers everywhere, all making Monaco totally unsuitable for modern Formula One racing. And if we are honest, it has never really been a suitable track, even when cars were slower. But it is the glamour race of the year, where all of the beautiful people congregate. The bigwigs of fashion, industry, entertainment and even politics. People who aren't even interested in racing come along. They all come together, possibly for the carnival atmosphere rather than the sadly often processional racing. Although Monaco has thrown a few surprises at times. Monaco is far more about spectacle and being seen than pure racing. Having said that, there are certain times in history where the predictable procession is turned on its head and the form book is thrown out the window, producing totally remarkable races. In 1996, it should have been Damon Hill on the top step of the podium, but reliability robbed him of a certain win. Then John Alesi took the lead and had the same fate. So we saw Olivier Panis win in the Ligier's final career win, and it was a very strange sight indeed seeing Panis lead home David Coulthard, who was wearing a Schumacher helmet due to his own helmet fogging up. Sure, Panis had some luck that day, but he did come from mid-grid and have to pass a number of cars on track, notably Eddie Irvine, although I wouldn't call that a pass, I would call that a shove. Still, this is the kind of race that happens occasionally at Monaco. Oh, and given how brilliant Michael Schumacher was, check out his early exit on this particular day. Like an amateur, totally shocking and surprising. In 2004, in a year of total dominance by Michael Schumacher and the bulletproof Ferrari of that era, came a bizarre tangle in the tunnel when under a safety car, Juan Pablo Montoya was behind Michael in the tunnel, and it appears that Michael slowed down to warm up his brakes, and Montoya clouted him heavily. Of course, Michael Schumacher was enraged, but commentators believe it was more Michael's fault than Montoya's. Thank you, Montoya, for giving us something amazing that season, because Schumacher had won all of the previous races that year and would win the majority of the rest. What resulted was a wonderful battle between Jarno Trulli and Jenson Button. With Jarno Trulli, you've got to say Jarno Trulli. Anyway, at that time, both without an F1 win to their names, Jarno Trulli won superbly, showing what we all knew was really there, massive talent, and especially at Monaco, which he would demonstrate again and again in his career, particularly when he was driving for Jordan. Sadly, Jarno would win only one time. So to 1982, one of the craziest races in the history of Formula One. Alain Prost, in his ascendancy at the time, completely dominated in the Renault that was not breaking down for once. And with a few laps to go, the rain came. Prost elected to stay out and crashed with a couple of laps to go. There is not enough time to go into all of the details, look it up on YouTube, but with a few potential winners throwing it away for one reason or another, Riccardo Patrese, who had also thrown it away, somehow still came through and won the race. You had Derek Daly with a shot, Didier Pironi with a shot, Patrese twice with a shot. Is one of the most classic Grand Prix you'll ever see. I do not recall a race this bizarre ever in the history of the sport. A few notable crashes, disasters and spectacles come to mind. Senna in 88, that pole position lap, then the crash at Portier in the race when dominating. How about Alex Wurz tangling and passing Michael Schumacher in 98 in the Grand Hotel hairpin? One of the rare times a driver really had the balls to take it to the giant that Shuey was. What about Kimi Räikkönen fishtailing and taking out Adrian Sutil, also in 2008? Poor Adrian, he was on course for one of his rare good results too. But if you have seen his girlfriend, I think life's treated him pretty well. Kimi didn't give a excuse me, very typical of the man. How about Lewis Hamilton hitting the guardrail the same year, wrecking a wheel, yet still managing to win the race? Oh, the luck and the brilliance, all in one race. The tunnel to the following Nouvelle Chicane section have contributed to some of the great spectacles and disasters in Monaco. Think of Ralf Schumacher allegedly forcing Fernando Alonso wide in the tunnel, forcing him to crash in 2004. Nando was so incensed he waited, see Mansell Candidate 92, and gesticulated violently when Ralph came back past. Of course, there was the massive crash with Karl Wendlinger, ending in a coma, which pretty much ruined his career in '94. Button also had a clanger there too in 2003, as did Perez in 2011. It is a miracle that more have not got injured or killed there. Many have crashed from the bump coming out of the tunnel down to the hill to the Nouvelle Chicane, a truly stupid part of the track, with nowhere to go but into a barrier if you are ricocheting off a wall. Another shout out to a mate, Barry Don't. He reminded me of how good Alan Jones was at Monaco, yet he had to play second fiddle to the amazing Carlos Reutemann in 80 and 81, when Carlos feigned slow laps in qualifying while working on individual sectors, only to spring a magical lap when it mattered. AJ would shine in the 81 race, but reliability would take him out. Fellow Formula 1 fan Simon Welch gave me some good fodder for this race. He reminded me that Alberto Ascari in 55 and Aussie Paul Hawkins in 65 both ended their respective races in the harbour. Incredibly, Ascari survived but was killed a few days later in a sports car. Hawkins was fine. Sadly, Lorenzo Bandini was not so lucky in 1967. He was stuck in his burning car and died a few days later from his multiple injuries and burns. There is no way I can capture all the magic moments from Monaco in a short podcast, but possibly the most famous race there in its history is the 1984 race. This was the race that rightly or wrongly gave Ayrton Senna a reputation and set in motion a piece of the Senna vs Prost rivalry and political machinations that would rumble over the next 10 years. Basically, in a crazy wet race, Prost was headed for the win and he wasn't screwing it up this time. But Senna, in his first year, in a Toleman, an average car at best at that point of the season, was catching the overly cautious Prost. But Stefan Beloff in the Tyrrell was doing the same to Senna. In short, the race was red flagged just as Senna was about to take the lead. Accusations of favouritism towards Prost by the governing body, etc. still rumble to this day, regardless of the diabolical conditions. The double irony of this race is this. Firstly, Prost only got half points for winning a shortened race, yet would have had more points if he had come second in a full-length race. And secondly, Senna had clouted the chicane so hard during the race that he was actually unlikely to finish, which his team confirmed and still do to this day. So, Prost may have won the race anyway. Many do not let the truth get in the way of a good story, but it was actually Prost who lost the most that day, not Senna. Prost won, but it was not a celebrated popular victory, and Senna gained the victim of the system reputation he would harness later in his career. But it was Prost who lost the title by half a point, and this race played a massive role in that outcome. Wrapping it up, got a shout out to Niki Lauda. Rest in peace, what a champion. He gave us some amazing races, that fantastic Rush film basically which celebrates the heroic comeback that he gave us. He was to win at Monaco, and he was a wonderful talent. Thanks, Nicky. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for tuning in to Formula 1 Moments in Time with Lucien Byfield. Bye for now.